bus shuddered to a stop under the gray Virginia morning sky, its brakes hissing in the damp air. Emma stepped down from the transport with a single worn duffel slung over her shoulder, her boots meeting the asphalt with a quiet finality. She looked nothing like the other recruits milling about the Naval Special Warfare Training Center in Little Creek. Most of them carried themselves like pages torn straight from a recruitment poster, broad-shouldered, square-jawed, uniforms pressed so sharp you could cut paper on the seams. Their movement spoke of years in the military machine, from combat tours to elite unit trials. They laughed in tight knots, exchanged knowing nods, carried recommendation letters from commanders who would stake careers on their success. Emma was a different picture entirely at 31. She might have been mistaken for a university lecturer or a museum archivist. Auburn hair pulled into a practical bun, plain gray sweater, dark jeans, not a hint of makeup or jewelry. There was nothing in her appearance that sought attention, nothing that shouted she belonged in one of the most grueling programs in the world. She moved with quiet efficiency through registration, her steps steady, her hands controlled. The young sailor at the desk scanned her file and paused. Eyebrows rose as he flipped the pages. The documents were in order, stamped and signed, but most of the details were hidden behind thick black redaction bars. Places, dates, and affiliations were blurred into secrecy. "Ma'am, there's some information missing," he began cautiously, but Emma's voice, calm yet heavy with unspoken authority, cut across the sentence. "The documentation is complete. If there are eligibility questions, direct them to the program administrator." Her tone carried no heat, no arrogance, only the certainty of someone used to ending discussions before they began. The clerk hesitated, then nodded, handed her a bunk assignment and a stack of standard issue gear. As she walked away, his curiosity remained. There was even a note clipped to her file, stating that her background was classified above his clearance level. He would not speak of it, though the mystery would itch at him for days. Her assigned barracks room held 7 other women, all carved from the sharp edge of their respective branches. They sized her up without subtlety, eyes flicking over her slight frame. Her civilian clothes, the lack of visible rank. Next to her bunk sat Sophia, a Marine staff sergeant with arms like oak limbs, ribbons spanning her chest, and a reputation for breaking recruits who thought they could keep up. Sophia looked her over, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to dominance. "So, what's your story, sweetheart? Which general's daughter are you?" Emma continued folding her clothes into neat stacks, each movement precise, a rhythm learned from repetition. "I'm here to complete the program, same as everyone else." Sophia's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Right? And I'm here for the vacation." She gestured at Emma's plain clothes. "This isn't summer camp. People wash out in the first week. You look like you'd have trouble opening a jar of pickles." Around them, the other women listened, some openly, some pretending to focus on their own gear, while their ears stayed locked on the exchange. Emma's response came level and measured. "I appreciate your concern. I'm sure your experience will be valuable during training." It was not a challenge, not surrender either, and it left Sophia unsettled. Most people either flinched or bristled at her tests. Emma did neither. Rachel, a younger Army Ranger with the kind of muscular frame that told of years in gyms and on obstacle courses, joined in. "No offense, but what unit were you with? To get in here you need serious credentials." "I've served in various capacities. The specifics are not something I'm authorized to discuss," Emma replied. It was an answer built to frustrate, revealing nothing and inviting speculation. In a room full of soldiers who had bled for their spots, that secrecy was a lit match near dry tinder. Rachel and Sophia exchanged looks, decisions forming in silence. From the men's bay next door, Michael, a Navy explosive ordnance specialist, leaned on the doorway with crossed arms. "I think someone pulled strings to get you here. This is for operators, not office workers chasing stories for dinner parties." Emma glanced at him, a flicker passing in her eyes, not anger, not hurt, just a quiet assessment, as if noting details for later use. "Time will tell whether I belong here or not," she said, and turned to making her bunk. Her bed was regulation perfect, blanket tight enough to bounce a coin, pillow aligned with unerring precision. It was clear she had done this many times before, though no one could place when or where. That evening, they gathered for the first briefing. Emma sat near the back, notebook in hand, posture straight but unobtrusive, Others swapped war stories and banter. She wrote in tiny script too compact for prying eyes. She asked no questions, spoke to no one, yet missed nothing. The instructors laid out the expectations, the standards, the consequences of failure. While others nodded or muttered, Emma's pen moved steadily, capturing each point with disciplined focus. She kept the pages angled, hiding their contents from the curious. When the briefing ended and recruits drifted back toward the barracks, she walked alone through the compound under the weight of more eyes than she could count. Tomorrow the Real training began. What no one there could have guessed was that Emma had already faced training that made this place look like a warm-up. The scars under her plain clothes told stories locked behind clearance levels they would never reach, and she knew something they did not. The most dangerous operators were often the ones no one saw coming. She lay in her bunk that night, surrounded by women who had already decided she was a pretender and allowed herself a small, almost invisible smile. They had no idea what they were dealing with, and by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late to rewrite their assumptions. The alarm shattered the pre-dawn stillness at 0500 hours, but Emma was already awake, lying still in the darkness. She listened to the groans and muttered curses of her bunkmates as they rolled out of bed and fumbled for gear. She moved without hesitation, pulling on the standard PT uniform, the loose fabric making her frame look even smaller than it was. The others saw her readiness and read it as nervous anticipation. They had no idea that her body had been trained for years to wake before any alarm. Missions in her past demanding awareness hours before sunrise, in places where oversleeping could mean never waking again. Sophia emerged from her bed like a storm contained in human form, her muscular build filling the doorway, eyes already scanning for weakness. "Hope you've been hitting the gym, princess," she said loud enough for the whole bay to hear. "Today's going to separate the players from the pretenders." The first session was a baseline fitness test disguised as a workout. A 2-mile run in full gear, followed by an obstacle course designed to grind down even the strongest candidates. The instructors wanted to know who they could break quickly. Emma joined the formation without fanfare, her face unreadable, her breathing slow and steady. When the run began, she settled into the middle of the pack. Her pace was even, her form textbook perfect. She was not at the front challenging the leaders, nor lagging at the rear gasping for air. Rachel, running just ahead, kept glancing back with mild disbelief, expecting Emma to fall away at any moment. She should have been fading. Rachel panted to Michael when they crossed a stretch of gravel road. "Probably trained for this run for months. Maybe hired a coach," Michael grunted, more focused on his own breathing than mocking. Yet Emma's face showed no strain, only quiet attention to her surroundings. At the obstacle course, her approach became different from most. She did not charge forward to prove herself. Instead, she watched the others, noting mistakes, gauging the safest and fastest techniques. When her turn came, she moved with precision over power. Every action used leverage and balance rather than brute strength. On the rope climb, she locked her legs and let them carry her weight, arms only guiding. The method was efficient, conserving energy for later. Sophia muttered show-off under her breath, but she knew the technique was sound. Breaks between exercises brought out another habit that drew suspicion. While others collapsed to catch their breath, Emma pulled out her small notebook. She wrote in a cramped hand, full of symbols and shorthand that looked less like diary entries and more like tactical reports. Rachel leaned toward Sophia during a water break. "What is she even writing? It's like she's studying us." Sophia frowned. The woman's behavior was nothing like the other candidates. Most here fought for dominance or survival. Emma simply documented, each entry hidden from prying eyes. Lieutenant John, the primary instructor for their group, had taken note as well. Years in combat and training had taught him to spot weakness before it became dangerous. But Emma's presence did not fit any category he knew. She was not failing, but she was not boasting either. He kept watching, waiting for the inevitable moment when reality caught up to her. The afternoon brought a tactical movement exercise through the woods. The goal was simple: reach a flag without being spotted by instructors playing enemy scouts. Most treated it like an advanced game of hide and seek, using obvious cover and moving in predictable bursts. Emma moved differently. She chose routes that used terrain others ignored. She kept low when the wind was still and shifted only when natural noise covered her movement. Her path was unpredictable, her awareness sharp. She avoided sight lines instinctively, never stepping into open ground without an escape in mind. When she emerged at the objective, the instructor teams admitted she had passed completely unseen. John was waiting, his expression hard to read. "Where did you learn to move like that?" he asked. Emma's reply was calm. "Various training courses, sir. Nothing beyond standard availability." It was true enough to pass, but John knew better. That kind of movement came from experience far beyond textbooks or routine drills. Back in the mess hall that evening, whispers about Emma grew louder. Sophia, Rachel, and Michael huddled together at one table. "There's something wrong with her," Sophia said quietly. "Nobody moves like that without advanced training. And if she had it, why is it not in her record?" Rachel added, "And did you see the rope climb? That's not from some gym class. That's real military technique." Michael offered a theory. Maybe she's a washout from a special unit, someone who got booted for some reason. It made sense to them, letting them keep her in the outsider box even while admitting her skill. Emma, sitting alone in the far corner, wrote in her notebook. She was not only recording the day's events, she was analyzing the training itself. She noted weaknesses in the program, inefficiencies in the course design, gaps that would matter in real combat. She had trained in places where failure meant more than going home early. She had moved through cities where being seen meant death. She recognized this course for what it was. Hard, yes, but predictable, designed for soldiers who would work within structure, not the gray chaos where real special operations took place. When lights out came, she lay still in her bunk, listening to the soft breathing and quiet restlessness of her roommates. She knew the testing had only begun, and the real challenges would not come from the instructors alone. There were others in this barracks already deciding she was a threat to their place here, and she knew what they would try next. By the end of the first week, Sophia had turned her casual skepticism into a full campaign. Emma's continued competence had eaten away at her certainty, and instead of letting it go, she sharpened it into something deliberate. She began drawing others into her circle. Michael with his suspicious mind and knack for spotting inconsistencies, Rachel who had been on the fence but found Sophia's conviction contagious, and a few others who were willing to believe a stranger's presence meant something shady. They called it their quiet project, though privately Sophia named it Operation Reality Check. The goal was simple: find a crack in Emma's performance and widen it until she broke. Michael claimed the way Emma took notes was proof she was no ordinary trainee. She's documenting everything like she's writing a report for someone. He said over morning coffee, real operators live in the moment. They adapt. They don't study the program like an exam. Rachel built on that theory. Maybe she's working for some private military company, here to steal training methods. It made sense to them. It explained her skill without admitting she might actually belong. It also gave them an excuse. Sabotaging her was not personal. It was protecting the integrity of the program. The opportunity came during the second week's hand-to-hand combat training. Sophia volunteered to partner with Emma for a demonstration. Lieutenant John allowed it. Curious to see the matchup, Sophia was taller by half a foot and outweighed Emma by a solid margin. She had crushed many opponents simply by overpowering them. The group gathered around the mat. Sensing more than a simple sparring drill, Emma stood relaxed, studying Sophia's stance, the way she favored her left leg, the weight distribution that betrayed her likely attacks. When John signaled to start, Sophia came in fast, a barrage of punches designed to overwhelm. Emma barely moved, slipping past one strike, redirecting another with minimal effort. She countered not with brute force, but with surgical precision, a targeted strike that shifted Sophia off balance. Sophia stumbled, caught herself, tried to smother the moment with a muttered lucky shot, but she had felt the accuracy of that hit, the way it targeted points most fighters never considered. The second exchange was worse. Sophia tried to grapple, aiming to use her weight advantage, but Emma flowed around her like water, suddenly behind her, in a position that could have ended the fight instantly. Instead, Emma stepped away, resetting without a word. When John ended the drill, Sophia's jaw was tight. She had been outclassed, and everyone had seen it. For her, it was more than embarrassment. It was a threat to her image as the strongest in the room. That night, the so-called war council met in the maintenance shed. Sophia laid it out for them. Those were not standard techniques. that specialized training. Michael nodded, which proves she's not what she claims to be. Files are redacted because someone's covering for her. Rachel, remembering the precision and calm of the match, leaned in. What if she's not here to train at all? What if she's here to evaluate us? That suggestion landed heavy. If true, every slip they made could be reported up the chain, damaging careers. Sophia decided it was time to stop talking and start acting. Their plan was simple and cruel. During the next major exercise, they would isolate Emma, force her into failure, and make sure the instructors saw it happen. The chance came during a 48-hour field problem that tested navigation, reconnaissance, and endurance. Teams were assigned, and Sophia worked to ensure Emma was placed with her, Michael, Rachel, and 2 others from their group. It was the perfect setup. Emma surrounded by people who wanted her to stumble. Emma was named the navigator, a role she was well suited for. But when she checked her issued compass, the needle was wrong, offset just enough to cause major errors over long distances. Sophia asked with false innocence, "Problem? Equipment malfunction," Emma replied, producing a backup from her own pack, a habit born from missions where gear failure was more than an inconvenience. Michael's jaw tightened, his first attempt at sabotage undone in seconds. The second attempt came as they moved toward their first objective. Rachel, on rear security, began lagging, creating gaps in formation. When Emma addressed it, Rachel snapped that the pace was too fast, her voice carrying far enough to break noise discipline. Emma stopped the group, conducted a brief after-action review. She reassigned positions without accusing anyone directly, turning what was meant to be a flaw into a display of quiet leadership. The 2 neutral members of the squad noticed, though they said nothing. At the first objective, Michael staged his most blatant disruption, an accidental discharge of his training weapon. The loud crack echoed through the trees, alerting the enemy observers and forcing a retreat. By exercise rules, the mission was failed. Emma's response was unexpected. She called the group in close and spoke softly. "The original approach is compromised, but the rules don't specify how we gather the intel." She outlined a new plan, an alternate observation point the designers likely hadn't considered, signals disguised in natural sounds, contingencies for failure. The plan worked. They gathered the required intelligence, documented it with precision, and extracted without further incident. In the instructor's notes, it was marked as one of the most successful runs of the day. For Sophia and her allies, it was infuriating. Every trap they set only made Emma look better. Her preparation neutralized equipment failure. Her calm cut through formation problems. Her adaptability turned a blown mission into a model solution. By the end of the second week, the tension was visible. The whispered conversations stopped when Emma entered a room. Glances sharpened into open hostility. Her bunk was tossed during surprise inspections. Gear went missing and reappeared in odd places. Emma wrote everything in her notebook. Not complaints, but patterns, behaviors, probabilities. She had seen this progression before. Suspicion turning to open action. Her only challenge here was to manage it without breaking cover. She knew they were building towards something bigger, and she would be ready, whatever they had planned. It would not be the first time she had walked into an ambush and left without a scratch. The third week of training brought a change in the air. The candidates who had been clearly unfit were gone, leaving a smaller, sharper group. Exercises became more complex, standards tightened, and the pressure was relentless. Sleep was scarce, food was measured, and the instructors stopped explaining why they were doing anything. For Sophia and her circle, this was the chance they had been waiting for. The environment was now harsh enough that a single misstep could end someone's time here. They were convinced this was where Emma would finally crack. The week's culminating event was announced as an advanced evaluation exercise. Each team would infiltrate a mock enemy compound, gather intelligence, rescue a simulated hostage, and extract under simulated fire. The instructors were clear. This would be a decisive test. Emma checked the team roster and saw exactly what had been arranged. She was assigned to Team Alpha under Sophia's lead, with Michael and Rachel as teammates. It was no coincidence. This was designed to put her in their hands. Sophia smiled when she saw it. Not the friendly kind, but the sharp grin of a predator that believes the prey has been cornered. She gathered the team for planning. Michael suggested a fast and direct assault on the main entrance. Emma studied the map in silence for a long moment, then pointed out that the primary gate was a kill zone designed to channel attackers in a concentrated fire. Sophia's expression hardened. "So what's your alternative, princess?" Emma tapped the secondary entrance on the map. "Propose a diversion at the main gate while the real assault comes from here. Use their own security layout against them." Rachel gave a sharp laugh. "That's overcomplicated. Overcomplication gets people killed." Emma's tone stayed level. "Simple works when you have overwhelming strength. When you don't, you need to be smarter than the opponent." The discussion spiraled downward from there. Every suggestion Emma offered was rejected, replaced by Sophia's insistence on direct attacks. Michael backed her up, and Rachel followed along. The plan they built was reckless, but no one in that room was interested in hearing otherwise. When the exercise began, Sophia launched the team straight into her frontal assault. The result was exactly as Emma had predicted. The team was cut down by defensive fire within 50 meters of the gate. By exercise rules, they had to continue the mission with simulated casualties and reduced capability. Emma's voice was calm when she spoke. "Outstanding leadership, Sergeant." The words were neutral but carried a sting. Sophia's cheeks flushed with heat. She snapped back that maybe they would be doing better if certain members supported the plan instead of undermining morale. "Morale is not undermined by accurate tactical assessment," Emma said evenly. "It's undermined when pride outweighs the mission." The words landed hard because they were true. Sophia had allowed her personal mission to discredit Emma, to override the real objective, and the evaluators watching from a distance could see it. Something in Sophia shifted then. The humiliation burned too deep. She decided that if she could not prove Emma incompetent by normal means, she would push her into a situation so dangerous and impossible that failure would be inevitable. "New plan," she announced. Emma would conduct a solo penetration of the compound while the rest provided overwatch. It was a suicide order disguised as tactical necessity. Even if Emma reached the hostage, she would never make it out against the defensive positions alone. Emma studied the map again, her mind already calculating angles and routes. She had faced worse in reality, against live ammunition and enemies who would not hesitate. "Understood," she said. "I'll need 5 minutes to plan the approach." "No," Sophia said sharply. "No planning, no notes, go now with what you have." Michael and Rachel exchanged uneasy looks. This was no longer about the exercise. It was about personal destruction. But Emma only nodded, checked her gear with routine precision, and announced she would begin her solo assault in 30 seconds. As she moved off, there was no sign of fear. If anything, her focus sharpened. Her movements were precise, efficient, and entirely unhurried. From the overwatch position, the team lost sight of her almost immediately. She seemed to vanish into the treeline, absorbed by the forest as though she had always been part of it. The evaluators moved closer to the screens tracking her. What they saw was unlike anything they had expected. Emma's route avoided every obvious approach path. She slipped through blind spots in the sensor coverage that even the designers had overlooked. At the perimeter, she did not break through. She slid around. Her first effect was felt in the guard reports. Equipment failures, sensors shutting down in sequence, communications disrupted, patrols breaking their patterns. It was a display of electronic and psychological warfare, so seamless that the exercise controllers initially thought they were dealing with a technical malfunction. They had no idea Emma had learned these methods in places where mistakes meant execution. She knew exactly how to make human eyes look away at the right moment, and how to make machines fail without drawing suspicion. From their position, Sophia, Michael, and Rachel watched with a mix of awe and disbelief. Michael whispered that she was ghost walking, a skill no regular training program taught. Sophia's face was pale now, the reality of her misjudgment taking root. Emma reached the hostage building and created a diversion to pull defenders away. When they moved to counter the phantom threat, she extracted the hostage through a route considered impossible by the planners. 18 minutes after leaving, she was on her way back, mission complete. When she appeared from the treeline near the overwatch position, she looked as though she had been on a casual patrol, breathing steady. "Gear in order, mission complete," she told Sophia. "Hostage recovered, intelligence gathered, no compromise." Sophia stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time. The woman she had been trying to expose was clearly something far beyond her understanding. Before any of them could speak, the radio crackled with Lieutenant John's voice. All teams return to base for debrief. Team Alpha remain in position. Vehicles approached, carrying senior officers. The exercise was over, but for Emma, something far more serious had just begun. The vehicles rolled to a stop with the weight of authority. Dust settled in the hot Virginia air as doors opened and senior figures stepped out. At their head was Master Chief Robert, a man whose 30 years in special operations had etched every line in his weathered face. He had been watching the exercise from the command post, and what he had seen in Emma's solo run had forced him to leave his seat and come here in person. Behind him came Captain Michael, the commanding officer of the entire facility. His presence alone spoke volumes. He did not waste his time on routine training outcomes. If he was here, the matter had shifted into something far more serious than pass or fail. Sophia and her team stood at attention, but the stiffness in their posture could not hide the tension in their eyes. They had spent 3 weeks undermining Emma, and now they were beginning to suspect they had been targeting someone far above their own rank and clearance. "Stand at ease," Robert said. His voice was steady but carried a weight that cut through the air. His gaze swept across the group, lingering briefly on Sophia, then fixing on Emma. There was no warmth there, no hostility either, only the sharp focus of a man who knew exactly what he was looking at. Emma remained at attention. Even though the command was to relax, her posture was perfect, her expression calm. But her eyes held a flicker of recognition, a quiet acknowledgement that the pretenses were about to end. "Candidate Emma," Robert began, "your performance in today's exercise has raised questions that require immediate clarification." "Yes, sir," Emma replied, her tone unwavering. Robert glanced at the tablet in his hand. The screen filled with information well above the clearance of anyone else present. "According to official records, you are here as a civilian candidate with limited service history. What we observed today does not align with that record." Sophia could not hold back any longer. "Sir, she's been acting suspicious since day one. She takes constant notes, uses techniques that don't match her file. Her gear is different. Nothing about her fits." Robert turned his head slowly toward Sophia. The pause that followed was heavier than any shout. "Sergeant Sophia, your concerns have been noted. However, you are not in a position to make judgments about operational capability or security classification." The words landed like a controlled detonation, precise and devastating. Sophia's face stiffened, and a flicker of something close to fear crossed her eyes. Robert went on, "Your conduct toward candidate Emma has been documented. Harassment of personnel operating under classified authority is a matter taken very seriously. Depending on review, it can carry career-ending consequences." Michael and Rachel exchanged quick, uneasy glances. It was one thing to doubt a peer, another to learn that peer had been operating under orders far above their reach. Robert shifted back to Emma, his tone softened only by a fraction. "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need a truthful answer. Are you here solely as a candidate, or do you have an additional mandate?" Emma met his eyes for the first time since arriving. There was a hint of openness in her expression. "I was assigned to assess the program's operational readiness. Sir, the tasking came from the highest level. My cover required full participation in training." The silence that followed was absolute. Every candidate within earshot processed the meaning. She had not been competing for a spot. She had been evaluating the very system they were fighting to survive. Robert nodded once. His eyes dropped briefly to the faint outline beneath her uniform at the base of her spine. He knew what was hidden there, a mark that very few carried, signifying presidential service at a level most people would never even hear of. Captain Michael stepped forward. "The performance today, especially under hostile internal conditions, is being forwarded to command. It will be used to refine operational protocols. That was the primary purpose of your presence here, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir," Emma replied. The goal was to identify weaknesses in training and candidate cohesion, including vulnerability to internal friction. She did not look toward Sophia or the others, but the implication was clear. Robert gave a short breath that was almost a laugh. "In my time, I've seen many types of operators. The dangerous ones are not always the loudest or the strongest. Sometimes they're the ones who walk in quietly and leave with the mission complete before anyone realizes they were there." He turned to Sophia's team. You all wanted to see if she belonged. Well, now you know, consider yourselves fortunate this was only an exercise. If this had been real, her skill would have kept you alive, even after everything you tried to do. The debrief ended with Robert ordering Emma to accompany him back to the command post. The rest of the team was dismissed, though none moved quickly. The weight of what had just been revealed hung over them like heavy air before a storm. As Emma walked toward the waiting vehicle, the eyes of every candidate followed her. The woman they had dismissed as a pretender had dismantled a fortified compound alone, under pressure with hostile teammates, and had done so without a single wasted movement. She climbed into the vehicle without looking back. The door closed, and the convoy pulled away, leaving the training ground buzzing with whispers. Some spoke of respect, others of fear, but all now knew the truth. She had been there under the authority of the highest office in the country, carrying a mandate none of them had the clearance to fully understand. And while her mission here was over, the way she had carried it out would be studied long after her footsteps faded from the Virginia soil.